A lot of people, have heard about Novations. They watch some YouTube videos. The contractor runs off with the money and they're like, wholesaling's not so bad after all. But just from doing so many and just kind of having that mindset of constantly wanting to improve things and having like a service-based mindset with them too, focusing on making the seller happy, focusing on delivering the result so they're satisfied at the end. Once the seller's unhappy, or if they don't like or trust you, or they feel like you're not delivering on your promises, that's when the deal will start to unravel.
Hey friends, welcome back to the Evergreen Marketing Podcast by Carrot.com. I'm your host Brady, and this is where we're here to help you build a business of freedom and impact. Today, I got my new friend, Rich Wonders, probably not a new name to you guys, but he's going to be talking about how he's getting leads from other people all over the US, and it's trash leads that other people are throwing away most of the time. So we're going to be talking about how he gets leads, where these coming from, how he's closing them, a few things you can pick up on it, and maybe you might even partner up with Rich. But it's going to be a really good podcast. And even if you think you've figured out what this podcast might actually be about from the name Rich Wonders or the title, you're probably wrong. There'll be some surprises in here. So it's going to be a good conversation. But Rich, welcome, man. How are you?
Man, doing great, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, good, man. I'm glad to hear you're doing well. So everybody, real quick before we get into it, one tip that actually works. Rich is doing follow-up. A lot of the top investors are doing follow-up. This one's really simple for you guys. I'm going to just keep hammering this over and over. If you don't have some sort of automated follow-up in place, you are losing deals. Rich, how many of your deals would you say come from a follow-up versus like first or second contact?
Definitely over half.
Yeah.
So
over half.
Yeah, and we do a 3-call system too. So we're not doing 1-call closes, but yeah, follow-up is essential. If you only get the ones you can close on the first call, like you're leaving a lot of money on the table for sure.
Absolutely. That's good to hear. I was looking for that. That's a good percentage to know. So yeah, guys, if you don't have text, email, follow-up in place, even if it's at least just the instant reply when a lead comes into your website, make sure you get that in place. It's amazing how many investors I talk to where they're like, yeah, I don't send out any emails. I don't do text. I don't do anything. I try to call them a few times. There's so many deals left on the table. So do all that in Carrot CRM. We have sequences built out that are already there and you can tweak them, but check that out. All right. So Rich, so people know where this convo is headed, about how many deals a month on average right now are you closing nationally? What's this look like? So people know that you're the real deal.
So I would say on average in the last year, we're looking at probably about 20 a month, between 20, nice. 30. Yeah.
So that's legit volume. Okay. So what did your first run? You've had a wild real estate journey. Tell me about that. Like what you got into real estate and it was very different from what you're doing right now. What did the first run at real estate look like? Like what flopped before you have this system that you have now that's bringing in 20, 30 deals a month?
Yeah. So I actually started working for another wholesaler. That's how I cut my teeth. And we were doing in-person in Phoenix. He was running PPC ads. And I was going and running around in my little Prius, going to in-house appointments. And I did that for about a year until we switched to a national PPC all over the phone model. And I did that for about a year as well. And this was, I started wholesaling in 2019, right in January 2019. So we got into the national right before COVID hit. So it was like a stroke of luck, God's grace, however you want to look at it. And then, yeah, through COVID, we were doing a national model and still selling everything off market, though. We were calling realtors to try to find buyers that way, looking up cash buyers, skip tracing them, Facebook groups, all the normal wholesale stuff. I started with traditional wholesale, both in person, then over the phone, struck out on my own for about 9 months and spent my money. Money was going out faster than it was coming in. And I had a buddy, Brandon Simmons, link me up with another company, a guy named Corey Geary. And that's where I learned this strategy I'm going to talk about for the first time, Novations. And worked with him for about 8-9 months. And then, we ended up parting ways. And I was having wholesalers start to send me leads because he had a mastermind and he played my phone calls. And then basically I just started going online and playing my calls online and telling more people to send me leads and closing deals on Instagram every day. And eventually built a team and education program about my sales process and this strategy and kind of the rest. I went from having zero money when I started. I had like $3,000, baby on the way. My old job that I left, I was selling vacuums door to door. And when I left, my boss basically cussed me out on my way out and told me never to come back. And I was going to fail. And I was an idiot for leaving because I'd worked there for 9 years, made a lot of money with him together. But by God's grace, it all ended up working out. And, now I homeschool my kids. My wife homeschools our 4 kids. We get to travel. We get to drive our dream cars and, very blessed. Like it worked out better than I ever could have imagined. Yeah.
That's really cool, man. Nothing like getting cussed out on the way out of a job and told you're going to fail. Holy cow, man.
It's a good motivator.
So reading in between the lines for the second, and then we'll get to the tactics and the strategy of what you're doing.
Yeah.
You went out on your own. You said something like that resonates with a lot of wholesalers, like going out on your own, just blowing money, any money you have, blowing it on marketing. What was like the biggest learning lesson in that phase? And really what I'm asking is like, what gives you energy? Because wholesaling is a lot for one person, like the whole process. You're a lead generator, you're a marketer, you're a negotiator, you got to sell to buyers. There's so many moving pieces. And I think it's really cool when I talk to people who are like, they've kind of found their lane, or at least, said, okay, I'm not going to do the whole operation. I'm going to get deals coming to me. I'm going to focus on what I'm really good at instead of just endlessly trying to run the entire business yourself. So sorry, that was kind of a loaded question, but like any key takeaways from that season and what gives you energy now?
Oh, definitely. So when I left the first place I worked, like that month, I had closed like over 360,000 in deals. So I was coming off of a high of like, yo, I got this. You know what I mean? And it was 2 parts, right? So part of it was I was really good at acquisitions and getting the front end of the deal. But you're right. There's all these other jobs that I thought would be easy that were actually, I wasn't as good as those things as I thought I would be. Right. So that was part 1. Part 2, also, I can take full accountability for where it was a personal development and just a mindset thing that I worked a lot harder for other people than I worked for myself. That makes sense. When other people were watching, I wanted to perform. I wanted to impress them. But when I got on my own and no one was watching me, it was really easy to take my foot off the gas. And then I got in this point, and you're right, like hearing that PPC bell ding and, there's another 500 being charged, and you know what I mean? And just feeling that pressure, I just found myself like some days just like staring at the wall, just like, oh my gosh, like I am not on the path to becoming a successful wholesaler or growing a company or anything. Like I'm treading water at best. And it felt like the weight of the world was on my shoulders. And I was just floating in a little rowboat in the middle of the ocean. It was like no one understood. I would sometimes I had bought a Jeep when I first went out on my own. And I'd tell my wife, hey, let's just hop in the Jeep. Let's go. There's a place we could go off-roading right by the house. And I would just distract myself from like everything except like the actual work. So it was a very challenging time, but it taught me a lot of lessons that I'll never forget. And I don't know, like the tough times are what make you say like never again. And that's where you kind of have like that brick wall where you're like, look, I'm never going back there. So I'm grateful for all those tough times.
Man, that's too real. Was it more of a gradual thing, or was there a specific moment where like, I got to get my crap together, in regards to what you're saying about it was easier to work for someone, but developing the self-discipline and working for yourself?
Well, I mean, by the time that I realized like I was in an irreversible position because I was running out of money, I went and worked for someone else. So that's like really when I got myself together. Cause once I realized I was failing, cause I wasn't that great at running the PPC. I wasn't that great at dispositions, you know what I mean? And it was just me working all the leads. And once my money started getting below a level where I only had like a couple months worth of expenses left, for my family, I was like, yo, like I could, like my options were like, go find some unrelated job or work for another wholesaler. And I was like, look, I know I got this. Like, because when I worked for the first guy, like I was the top person and I got moved up to sales manager. And then, you know what I mean? I knew I had it in me and I knew I could pull it off. But I'm like, look, I'm not there yet to like be able to do this on my own. I don't have the reserves. I don't know what I don't know. Like I had a little LLC, but I didn't, you know what I mean? Like my business structure wasn't correct. I was behind on taxes, like the whole 9 yards. So,
Man, that's wild. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you sharing that journey. I think there's way more people going through that than we realize, and most people just don't talk about it. So thanks for just sharing it, man.
yeah.
So tell me about what's your model for lead gen right now? Where are the leads coming from? And then we'll talk about negotiation and the rest of the strategy. But I first want to like, where are leads coming from and what types of leads are they?
Yeah. So most of my leads come from actually other wholesalers all around the country. So on my Instagram, I'm constantly promoting our website, novationjv.com, and podcasts and all over the place, where basically I invite wholesalers, send us your motivated leads, that are in small towns or they're in too nice of condition and it doesn't fit the wholesale model, but they have problems to solve. They want to sell, they need to sell. So our strategy is unique where we can monetize these leads that normally are the ones that leave you scratching your head where you're like, man, I know there's a deal here. And if I just had like a infinite money printer, I would just buy this house, clean it up and throw it on the market. Right. And I know there's money in this. So a good majority of them are for other wholesalers. I also have some partnerships with some lead generation companies. Brent Daniels TTP we use has some great results. Property Pros, and then I also buy leads too. I buy PPL leads as well from a couple different places. So
Nice. That's cool. Okay, so you got leads coming from all over. These are like the hard to close, what some other people might consider trash leads. Are there any
yeah,
other quote unquote trash leads that you've come across? Like any other scenarios?
so the small town ones are really like our bread and butter, just because those are the ones you can get for super cheap, and nobody else knows what to do with them.
Yeah. Hard to
So
pull comps for. Yeah.
hard to pull comps for. There's not investor activity. But with my Rainmaker strategy, the Novation strategy, we sell them to actual people that are going to live there, that are using loans. So it opens up like a whole new market of buyers where we're not selling to investors for most of these. We're selling to this just everyday people. So
Yeah.
yeah. And then the houses too, where they're not due for a remodel. Maybe they're beautiful. Maybe they're just okay. You know what I mean? But kind of
Yeah.
everything that's in that range where it doesn't make sense for someone to come in and gut the property and remodel it. But the seller has problems to solve.
Mhm.
That's our bread and butter. Like the motivation is by far the most important factor. They have to want to sell, need to sell, and have problems to solve, because that's where we can step in and, we give them the result in exchange for a discount, basically. So,
Mm. Do you have any formal process for like lead scoring or different criteria, or is it more of just a gut feel because you've been doing this a while?
so like internally, we'll label them on a 1 to 5, 5 being the hottest. And then we also do like a 1 to 5 on condition. So one's like horrible, not financeable, major structural problems, like AC, roof, something like that.
Mhm.
2 is just like yucky and nasty and maybe some big ticket items. 3's like kind of like normally yucky or dirty somewhat, but some improvements livable, normally financeable. And then 4 is like some updates done, but not like beautiful. And then 5 is just like fully remodeled, turnkey, ready to go.
Mm. Okay, that's helpful. Um, so how are your I was going to say, how are your partners getting leads? But you already answered that. They have different lead sources. You got PPC, you have partners. Um, One thing I want to ask you before we talk about the strategy, you were a Carrot member years ago, right? When you were doing
I was. Yeah,
PPC.
when I went out on my own. That's right.
How are you using it? Because people use Carrot in so many different ways, like SEO, some just for credibility, some PPC. What was your use case?
It was my landing page for my PPC campaign that I was trying to run on my own.
Yeah.
So I didn't know how to build a website, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I had always heard about Carrot, and I was like, okay, well, I need a website. Who's the go-to person? Boom, Carrot, set it up. And then I set up my own Google PPC, but it was kind of like a dog trying to fly a plane a little bit. Like I did the best I could,
Yeah.
but
It's hard, man. I mean, you can do it yourself. We have people that do it themselves, but like finding a good trusted agency or someone that does that full time is usually the right call. Um, okay, so you mentioned Novations. Um, Walk us through the strategy. Like you mentioned before we hit record on the podcast, your flavor of Novations is different from what people might expect. What do you mean by that?
yeah. So a lot of people, when they hear about Novations, they think of partnering with the seller and doing some major remodeling or value add,
Uh-huh.
which it's a valid strategy. It's just not my cup of tea. You know, the way we do Novations is, the lead comes in, we do a discovery call. I've got a three-part acquisition phase, three-phase acquisition strategy, where first phase, discovery call. The whole purpose is just learn all about the seller situation and all about the property, and just try to get as clear of a picture of their overall goals, fears, needs, wants, and everything about the property itself so we can evaluate it. Phase two is the anchor phase, and that's where we show what a realistic cash offer would look like by showing recent cash sales in the area, letting them know where we think an investor would be on it. And normally, the pushback is, oh, but my house is nicer than this. And our pushback is, hey, you're right. We understand, but this is what cash buyers are looking for. Right. And then so it creates kind of that gap between a cash offer and, the traditional. Most of these people, they've already made up their mind. They don't want to list with an agent. Right. They have some life situation going on where it's just not a fit. Maybe it's a time crunch. Maybe they had a bad experience. Maybe the house does need some minor things. Maybe they need money to move or, for their next place. And then our third phase is the delivery phase, where we walk them through the contract, explain the whole process, get them to sign. But the thing that we do different is the only really things I spend money on are helping them move, cleaning out the house, or doing just obvious things that would need to be done anyways once the house sells. So I typically won't remodel kitchens, bathrooms, replace flooring. I'm not looking to add value. Not that that isn't a viable strategy, but like there's been times where I have 100 deals going at a time. And you can imagine, you turn a
Mm,
couple of those
yeah.
into remodels and the complexity level goes way up and
You're
the risk
strung
level
out.
goes
Yeah.
up for
Yeah.
sure. So yeah, we call it the concierge service, and we just position it as a hands-off white glove experience where we deliver the result on a silver platter.
Interesting. A side note, are those three steps, are they always three separate calls or do you run into one call closes?
The phase one and two can blend together if it's a motivated seller and an experienced acquisition person that can comp on the fly and really kind of handle that with some finesse.
Yeah.
Uh, but
Hard thing
yeah,
to do.
that third call or that third phase is always a separate call, and I've split tested it a bunch of different ways. You can get people to sign on the first call, but you'll have a higher rescission rate and more problems down the line just because our process isn't saying, hey, I'm going to buy your house. It's saying, hey, trust me to get this done for you. Come in the car with me and I'm going to take you to the promised land, essentially. So it's a little bit slower of a process. And we're dealing with a lot of times too higher price point houses than you typically deal with a wholesale deal, right? And we're dealing with different types of people where, normally if the house is super distressed, it's a different type of mindset with the seller than someone that has their family home with their family living in it. And then they have to move to a new job in a different state. And there's a lot more moving parts on these deals. And that's why a lot of people, have heard about Novations. They watch some YouTube videos. They try to get into it. They get burned, or things go wrong and they're like, whoa. Like, it's kind of like when people fix and flip a house and the contractor runs off with the money and they're like, wholesaling's not so bad after all. You know what I mean? So these deals, they can get messy and they can get complicated, but just from doing so many and just kind of having that, have the mindset of constantly wanting to improve things and having like a servant based mindset with them too, of like focusing on making the seller happy, focusing on delivering the result so they're satisfied at the end, really helps keep the deal together. Because the seller's happiness, once the seller's unhappy, or if they don't like or trust you, or they feel like you're not delivering on your promises, that's when the deal will start to unravel. So it's very important that you do what you say what you do, and you serve them on a high level so that they're happy at the end.
I love that. I love how you said like servant mindset, just focus on keeping them happy. What's your qualification process look like for sellers? In other words, like, how are you finding out, what's that conversation to find out whether Novation's a good fit for them?
So the things that would be a deal killer would be if they have a really short timeline, because typically these take 60 days. If everything goes right, you know what I mean? Sometimes it can be a little quicker if it's a cash buyer, right? But so we have to make sure that they have a realistic timeline. And then they also have to have a realistic price expectation, and a realistic expectation of what their other options are. Because they come into this thinking price is the thing that's going to solve my problem. I need this amount of money because I have these problems to solve. But overall, they're looking for an overall result where, once you can solve their other problems, the price becomes less important because, price is something that's easy to quantify and it's easy to focus on. Like, hey, I need this much money, but a lot of times, the sellers come in, they want retail price.
Especially if they saw a Zestimate that, they think is gospel.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Or maybe they're talking to other wholesalers that are inexperienced and they're giving them, they're throwing around numbers that won't ultimately get the deal done. So setting those realistic expectations is really important with them.
Nice. Okay. What are you doing for comping? Like what's your process?
I use PropStream, and then I also use all the consumer sites. Zillow's probably the one I use the most, but I'll hop around on Redfin, Realtor.com. So our comping process, there's two different key stories we have to get straight. One, we have to know in our own head internally what we think the property will realistically sell for on the market, right? So we know what we can offer. And the nice thing with Novations are you don't have to factor in rehab costs. You don't have to factor in investor profit. You just have to basically, like, we go and look for the most similar properties in the immediate area, see what they sold for. Now, obviously, if the house is nicer than the subject property, we know ours will sell for less and vice versa. And if it took a long time to sell, we also know, well, this sold at 200,000, but it was 147 days on the market. So we know we have to put it up for less because we don't have that much time. We need to get an offer within the first 30 days of getting it under contract. So we internally need to know what it'll sell for. Our formula on what the max allowable offer is 90% of current condition value. So the current condition value is what we will reasonably think it'll sell for quickly. So 90% of that, because we have to count for realtor commissions, closing costs, and any miscellaneous expenses or concessions. And then minus at least 30,000 from that, as 30,000 being our minimum profit for the deal to be viable. So if the house would sell for 300,000 as is, maybe fixed up, it'll sell for 370. But as it sits right now, other houses like that are selling for 300. So 90% of that would be 270 minus 30,000 from that for our minimum profit. That would put us at 240. But like normally a house like that, if the ARV is like 370, you know what I mean? Or whatever the case is, you would have to get it locked up a lot lower for it to be a viable wholesale deal, because you have the cash buyer still needs to put money into the house and make a profit for their risk and effort. So we first need to know what it'll sell for. And then the second thing we look for is all the lowest cash comps in the area, because these are actual investor purchases. So we're not saying, hey, this is what your house is worth. We're saying, this is what investors are paying for properties in the area. And then they say, oh, but my house is much nicer than that. We say, hey, Mr. Seller, you're totally right. But investors, these are the type of properties they're looking for, because they're not planning on living in there. They need to remodel them and make a profit, or, maybe keep them for a rental. But you're dealing with someone that is looking at this from a business standpoint, and they have limited resources and they have to pick the best opportunities. So we kind of create that gap there. Yep.
So this is really interesting, because most investors I talk with, Rich, it's, I feel like you just simplified the negotiation process and made it a little more transparent. Whereas a lot of times, and I'm not saying right or wrong, just pick your flavor, but a lot of investors will say like, okay, well, here's your options for selling with an agent, or here are the reasons why it makes sense. And it becomes a much longer conversation when you're going off of potential home value, potential ARV versus this is what investors are paying. It's more black and white. Yeah, that's interesting.
I'm a simple guy, man. And like, I've had a team of 15, 20 people for the past like 2-3 years, you know what I mean? And all virtual, all people that have applied through Instagram. So I don't know. I'm simple just because like my brain works pretty simple most of the time. And I've really spent a lot of time and effort to try to simplify the process, because I know simple scales and fancy fails. I think Hermosi says that.
Yeah.
So, yep.
I love that, man. What are some of the things that will break a Novation deal, or some of the red flags you look out for to save yourself the headache of, going through something that's not going to work out for the seller?
If it's a really bad condition house in the middle of nowhere, like a shack in the woods, that's tough, because there's no investor buyer and there's a low probability of a retail buyer. Now, with that being said, though, there are exceptions to that. So like I always tell people, like, look, if you've got a motivated seller, just let us take a look at it, because like we had one in this town in Maine, and this house, if you would have sneezed too hard, it would have fell over, right? And we got it under contract. I forget what the exact numbers were, but long story short, like I think we got it under contract for like 50 grand or something. And we ended up netting like 80 something thousand on it. And this was a house, people bought it for the land. They're knocking it over and they're building a new house. And we've had other, you know what I mean? So it's weird. There's not like a certain type of property. Now, obviously, the more demand there is for a property, that's good for us. But we do so many big deals in small towns that I've never heard of. We've done one deal there. I'll probably never do another deal there again. You know what I mean? But it's just the right situation where you make your money on the buy price, and then we buy low and then we sell it low too. So the buyer still gets a good deal. You know what I mean? Because we want to move everything fast. Like the worst thing in the world is having like a deal board just filled with deals. Like it looks great, like in the office, like, oh, look at all my deals. But it's like, oh, dang, this one's 6 months old. This one's 3 months old. You just have like a graveyard basically that you're not getting paid on any of those. Like we get paid to close the deal. So I always sell them at a discount because we want multiple buyers. We want options if they try to beat us up during the inspection period or the escrow. So yeah, you don't want to try to make your money by pushing the sale price. You make your money by being really shrewd in negotiating on the front end and leaving yourself enough room.
Interesting. So tell me, I want to make sure we cover a little bit more about Novations before we wrap it up. I guess negotiation too, but Tell me more about the silver platter thing. How do you position that with sellers? The
So,
concierge service you talked about.
with the Novations, it's not mentioned at all during the negotiation process. And the reason is this: they think the cash offer is the solution to their problem. And they're not open to an alternative until that option has been eliminated. And that's why during our negotiation process, we show them like, hey, this is what investors are looking for. This is what the types of properties they're buying. This is the price range they're buying them in. And this is what they're doing. And we'll show them, hey, look, they fixed it up. Now it's back on the market for $100,000 more. And it's, and we show them that. We try to give them the as realistic expectations as possible of what an actual cash offer will look like. But we always leave a little light at the end of the tunnel, where the way we position ourselves in the call is as a glorified information gatherer. So it's always, I have to speak to the powers that be. I have to get a final decision, take everything I'm saying with a grain of salt. So we have the advantage of being able to bring up these low comps, but we're very fluid, where you can't nail us down, because it's like, I'm not saying this is what the offer is. This is just what I'm seeing. So it gives us some room to kind of feel things out without getting stuck down to a position. And then, like, one thing we do too when they push back on price is we flip it around, where we show them through the investor lens of like, this is how investors are looking at this. And, I want to make sure I'm not missing anything. Like, if we were to buy this property at X amount, I'm trying to figure out how we would be able to make that work, because it's not really a fit for a remodel. And, this one's sitting on the market. So it's the big thing is the leverage, where we always want the seller selling us on why we should buy their house, rather than us trying to convince them to please sell your house. Pick me. I know you're talking to all these people. Please pick me. I'll give you more. I'll do this. And a lot of wholesalers will chase sellers because they know, like, hey, look, I'm paying all this money for leads. I need deals. So they feel like they need the seller.
Yeah.
Right. But the reality is that, a true motivated seller needs you more than you need them. You know what I mean? And once you understand your position, where you actually can solve their problems, and you truly believe that you're the best option. Like, I look at every seller as like, look, guys, this is our duty to make sure that they make the right decision and go with us, because if they go with these other companies, there's a good chance they're not going to be able to get the deal done. You know what I mean? And if they overpromise them and they can't deliver on that promise, you know what I mean? And the seller didn't understand that that was an unrealistic offer, the seller's going to be in a world of hurt. No one's going to make any money, and they're going to be right back where they started. So really just mastering your craft and having a repeatable process has been super helpful, because then when things go wrong, it's very easy to trace it back upstream, where, and especially if you're running a big organization, if everybody's doing their own thing, when something goes wrong, it's like, well, I don't know, like, what did you say in the beginning of the call? You know what I mean? Like, with having a systematized process, when things go left, it's very easy to go upstream and say, here's the point where you zigged where you could have zagged. You know what I mean? We do call reviews constantly. I'm really big on the sales training and really big on the communication with my guys. So that's is very important. When you can master that, that's how you can get people to willingly come on your side and feel good about it, rather than, I don't like the idea of like beating people up with low balls and trying to overpower them or assert dominance. I'm much bigger on being persuasive than being forceful.
Yeah, I like that. What are a couple of the big pieces of feedback that come up in your sales call reviews with your team?
Ooh. So it varies. But I
You're
would
like,
say,
I got to put on my coaching hat. Hold on.
like some of the reoccurring things is with the comps. I think people are afraid to give the really ugly low cash comps, because they have this thing in their mind that, oh no, that, this guy wants 200,000 for his house. If I show him this $70,000, cash sale, he's going to hang up on me. You know what I mean? But the reality of it is you have to do that. Like, you have to break the frame. And, I this is an analogy I give my guys, is the sellers, they want you to sit down for a good old game of checkers where you guys discuss what the retail value of the home is. They want an appraisal and they want to negotiate from there. But what we have to do is we have to completely reject that checkerboard and knock it off the table and set down our chessboard of, okay, this is the cash investor perspective. These are the type of properties cash investors are looking for. This is the price range they're paying. And this is what would make sense for a cash investor. And then the seller looks at it and they're trying to move their pieces, and there's not a lot of moves on that board. So, setting the frame is really important. Being a good listener is more important than being a good talker. What makes people trust you is when they feel understood, when they feel that you understand them, you have goodwill for them, and you're genuinely empathizing with them. And there is no shortcut. The shortcut is to actually care and be a good person. Like, that's the shortcut, because people can tell if you're not. And, hey, we all have one life to live. Like, I'm not going through just looking for, someone to take advantage of. I genuinely want to understand their situation. I genuinely want to do everything in my power to help them. Yes. Will I earn a handsome fee for that? Absolutely. But what we do is extremely difficult too. If everybody could pull this off, it wouldn't be that profitable. So there's a lot of crazy situations we get in where, like, there is no playbook. There is no, like, I had one where there was 13 stray dogs at this house, and the seller was supposed to get them all out before closing. Everything fell through. I ended up having to pay the electrician. It was in a small town in Mississippi. I had to pay the electrician $1,300 to take all the dogs home with him and go find homes for them. You know what I mean? Because if we didn't do that, the deal was going to fall apart. And there was no notary in town. They had to sign the final closing docs on the liquor store floor in town, just like crazy stuff. So,
oh my gosh,
I don't know. I kind of jumped around. I forget what the original question was, but
that's good. No, that was good. It was, what are you telling your guys in sales call reviews was the question. I think it answers it pretty well though. How do you position, agents when you're negotiating with sellers? Like, for the people, like, hey, they're probably just better off. Like, I've heard investors say, like, hey, 90% of my leads, my goal is to let them know they might be better off listing with an agent. What's your take on that?
Well, I mean, the vast majority of people we talk to have already written off agents being an option in their mind.
Gotcha.
So it's not something, you know what I mean? Because if they're seeking out a cash offer, they're normally in some sort of a jam, because we do all of our own marketing is all inbound marketing, and most of our JV partners are inbound marketing, or only the most motivated ones make their way to us.
That
you know
makes
what
sense.
I mean?
Yeah.
So, I just paint a full picture of what would be required and what the risks are. It's like, well, hey, Mr. Seller, absolutely, you could go and build a list of agents and have them come over one by one and give you listing presentations. They're probably going to come through and give you like a laundry list of things that would need to be done beforehand. And, then you list it on the market and have open houses and people coming in and out, and an offer, hopefully eventually comes in. Average days on market here is 147 days. But basically, like, we walk them, we position it as an experience rather than the number, right? We always try to shift from overall picture, because yes, our offer is going to be lower, but it comes with bells and whistles, and it comes with all the extra things. It's like, okay, well, you have one job, you make $100,000 a year, and then you've got another job, you only make $50,000 a year, but you get to live in a 10,000 square foot mansion. You got 3 Ferraris you can drive around. And you know what I mean? It comes with all these extra things with it. It's like, oh, okay. Well, if you go just off the salary, the 100,000's better, but the 50,000 doesn't sound so bad when it has all the bells and whistles. So,
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. That's helpful context because I guess what I was saying applies to most investors. Have heard that from are doing like a good mix of marketing, like a lot of outbound and some inbound, but you're right. A lot of your leads are inbound. These people have already written that off. So yeah, that's helpful, man. Well, cool, dude. I could talk this stuff all day. I always like to do a fire round, a quick little 4-question fire round before we wrap up. But before I do that, man, anything else you want to mention about like novations or anything like you feel would really help people understand this extremely complex subject that we could talk about for hours that,
Yeah.
you want to share?
Yeah, I could yap forever about this, but yeah, they can check me out on Instagram at Novation King. I've got a YouTube channel too, Novation King, novationking.com. I actually have a full training program with my blueprint, and then novationjv.com to do deals with
Yep.
us. But yeah, I did a 6-part series with Jerry Norton. You can definitely check that out if you have questions about novations, where we go over everything. Like people say that free content is better than a lot of the paid courses. So that'd be a good place to start for people.
That's awesome. The 6-part series on YouTube, Jerry Norton. I appreciate that. And like I said, yeah, there's so many questions I have. Anytime we talk about novations, it's like, oh, there's all these things, but it's a podcast. So hopefully you guys got value out of that. Go check out the YouTube series. But yeah, and if you have deals that might be a good fit for Rich, bring them to him. Go check it out. What was the website again to partner up with you? JV Novation?
Novationjv.com.
Novationjv.com. Cool. All right, man. Quick little 2-minute-ish fire round. I'm looking for like fast bullet point answers. I did not tell you about this. I did not prep you for this. First question, man. What's the best piece of marketing advice you could give someone? Strategy or a tactic that you like?
Oh, the best marketing advice: get a carrot site. No. the leads are the lifeblood of your business. So don't skimp on leads. Either master it yourself or get someone involved that's made it their life's work to master it. So
That's good. And recognize it. Recognize it soon. If you're struggling, recognize that you're struggling. That's good.
yeah.
What's a book that changed your life? And in a few words, what's the problem that it solved? Like a specific book for a specific thing or season.
Think and Grow Rich. I know that's not original, but that was one of the first self-development books that was introduced to me. And just having the notion of taking control of your mind and what the mind can, perceive and believe it can achieve.
Yeah.
Maybe I butchered that, but Think and Grow Rich was a big one. Obviously the Bible, I'm a man of faith. So being grounded in my faith is really important. Outwitting the Devil is another one that really kind of moved the needle for me as well. Screw Tape Letters. I mean, there's
Screw
a
Tape
bunch
Letters.
of good books. Yeah.
Screw Tape Letters is on my list. I have a rule where like I typically don't read a book or watch a movie, mostly with books, unless 3 people have recommended it. Like 3, because otherwise there's so many. Everyone says, oh, you got to see this. You got to read that. Screw Tape Letters, you're number 2 out of 3. So I might have to read those pretty soon. I hear that's pretty profound. Isn't it funny how I know I'm botching our 2-minute timer on my fire round, but isn't it funny when you get into the Bible, you get into Proverbs, you realize how many truths there are that have been regurgitated and reformatted into like other things, you realize like how much of the self-development and personal development world actually just stems from scripture that's already thousands of years old. Isn't that wild?
I love it. The
It's
truth
not
is
always-
the truth.
Yeah. It's not always said the same way. It's usually just a slight spin, but if you read the Bible and I feel like, oh, that just came from the Bible. They just said it in a different way and applied it to business. It's funny,
Absolutely.
man. What advice would you give your younger self, Rich, 10 years ago? What do you tell him?
Ooh. Keep going, buddy. I mean, here's the thing. If I could go back and change, I don't think I'd change anything. You know what I mean? My life was meant to be exactly how it was. I wouldn't want to change anything, but what the advice I would give to someone that was like me is really work on yourself, get to know yourself, get to know what you really want out of life, and then get around people that you admire and you respect, and make it your life's mission to just build up your attributes and build up your network and take with both hands. You know what I mean? Make the most out of every day, because we don't, each day is a blessing, and really go after the things that you want. Because I don't know, I was so afraid of failing for so many years, Like when I was working I didn't tell you, I don't think I mentioned this. My job before real estate, I sold vacuums door to door. I sold
Oh
Kirby
yeah, just
vacuums.
briefly. Yeah. Yeah.
And I was so afraid to try something else because I thought I would fail, but I was already failing. I wasn't living the life I wanted to live. So
Yeah.
you have nothing to lose. If you're going to fail, you may as well fail doing something that's worth failing at. You know what I mean? So I would say just
Mm.
go hard. And if you fail, that's okay. That's part of success. You'll eventually figure it out. You know what I mean? Or you'll figure that this isn't the thing for you and you'll find something else that you're meant to do. So
Oh, I appreciate that. I love how you said, do something worth failing at. That's cool. Where you'll be happy even if it didn't work out. Okay, last thing, man. Is there anything outside of real estate, any impact you're making, something you're doing that just totally lights you up that you want to share with people? Big
Ooh.
or small?
I don't know. I mean, the homeschooling the kids, all credit to my wife on that. I'm pretty hands off, but uh, I would just encourage people to, making money is one thing, but having sovereignty over your life and your family and having options and choices is so much greater than, if I made the same money that I make now, but I had to be in an office 80 hours a week and, my kids were all in public school, the money wouldn't matter to me. You know what
Mm,
I mean? And I think ultimately too, I mean, a lot of people find this out once you make a little bit of money. Hey, it's great. It's fun and everything, but it's not enough to make a life out of. And if the other things are out of whack, the money becomes less and less meaningful. It's just a band-aid on an open wound. You know
mm,
what I mean? So I would tell people like, hey, yeah, money's something that's good that you can quantify and you can track easily. But when you're building your dream life, go deeper than that. You know what I mean? Go deeper than just like, hey, I want to make this amount of money. Because anything that you ask the universe for, there's going to be a bill that comes for it at the end too, where there's a sacrifice that you make, an exchange that you make. So make sure you don't get tricked into thinking that the thing that you want is money, and then you give away all the other things that actually would have made you happy. Your sovereignty, your freedom, your choices, being to be around the people you love. And, I don't know. For me, life is
mm,
about experience, it's about shining your light, it's about becoming the best version of yourself. So,
That's
that's the
good.
most important stuff to me.
That's really good, man. I think a lot of people oversimplify, especially when they're not doing this full time yet, and they think, "Well, I'm going to set this goal, this monetary goal, because that'll probably take care of the stuff." And they don't think deeper than that. And they just assume, "Yeah, if I'm making this much money, I can fix these other problems. Maybe you can fix some of them, but not all of them." Yeah, that's good wisdom, man. We just got done homeschooling for the last 2 years. We've homeschooled on and off. It could be a hard thing. Like you need someone fully focused on that, and but it's also a really cool position to be in to be able to do that and to give that to your kids. That's really cool.
Yes. Yeah. It's not for everybody. And if I had to be the teacher, we couldn't pull it off. Like, luckily, my wife has a passion for that. She's kind of built for that. You know what I mean? So I'm not trying
Yeah,
to push that on everybody. It's not a fit for every family, but luckily it's something I always wanted to do. And it's something my wife wanted to do. And now we're able to do it. So,
that's cool. I think generally speaking, if I can generalize, like moms have more patience than we do.
oh, for sure.
They're built for
For
it. Yeah.
sure.
That's cool, man. Well, again, I appreciate you hopping on, Rich. Thanks for sharing this with our audience. Everyone, do us a favor. Do Rich a favor as a way of saying thank you for hopping on, and share this episode with a friend. If you got deals to partner up with, reach out to Rich. And other than that, we will see you guys on the next episode.